It's not enough to be a good video editor, you also need to follow the trends, especially on Instagram. For example, over a year ago you would see plenty of flashy edits, but now everybody is going for something completely different. Following trends is often a guarantee of higher views. That's why being flexible as an editor makes you more valuable. And right now, after a long run of editing that fries your dopamine receptors, this style is going viral again. We are talking about minimal editing, but why does it work so well? According to Google, it strips away visual noise to highlight core messages. It reduces cognitive load so the viewer can process information faster. And that's what we're gonna learn today. I'll teach you animations that don't feel over the top and actually supplement the story instead of confusing the viewer. We're going to create a short storytelling reel about Drake's career, so just have a look.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon. With 5 Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth, and billions of streams, he built one of music's biggest careers. Now, Iceman is opening his next chapter.
I prepared all assets for you in the description below. You have necessary images, plus the voiceover. And don't mind the link right above it where you have my pre-built animations for After Effects that save a ton of time. Just skip it. Alright, once you open AE, make sure to import all assets into the project panel. Then create a new composition. For Instagram Reels, we're gonna set the resolution to 1080 by 1920, change the frame rate to 30, and you can set the duration to 18 seconds. Let's hit OK. So the first thing you want to do is head over to the project panel and grab voiceover and drop it on the timeline. So I'm gonna trim it to this position for now, and later on we're gonna build from there. So what you want to do with the prepared assets is grab Young Drake and drop him on the timeline. And right off the bat, for that minimal style, we're gonna need to have a nice clean background. So for this, I'm gonna right click, go over to new, and then I'm gonna pick a new solid. Over here you want to pick white color, then hit OK, and we're gonna rename it to white BG. Let's hit OK again, and then we're gonna need to replace the order, just like so, and the next step would be creating grid in the background. So for this, we're gonna need to duplicate the solid, so make sure it's selected, then hit Ctrl D, and we're gonna rename it to grid. Over here we're gonna apply the exact same effect, and now we can't really see anything, so first of all we're gonna change the color to black. Let's hit OK. And then what I'm gonna do is change the border to 2. Now the thing is that I want to mask out the grid and then feather it out. But if you select the layer and then grab the tool, you won't be able to do it. So in order to fix it, what we're gonna do is make sure to right click the layer, then I'm gonna head over to pre-compose, and I'll rename it to grid. Now once you've done that, then you can head over to the shape tools, and I'm gonna grab the ellipse tool, and I'm just gonna create a shape like that. Then you can double click the mask and adjust it however you want. I think something like that should do. Then we can head over to the properties for the mask. So I'm actually gonna hit F on the keyboard and I'm gonna bump up the feather. Okay, looks pretty cool. I'm gonna double click M for that layer and I'm gonna adjust expansion. Alright, I just want a subtle touch over here and I think this is gonna be good enough. In a second we're gonna add the movement to our animation, but first let's apply some of the effects. So I'm gonna head over to the grid and I'm gonna apply the effect called roughen edges. Over here, as you can notice, we can't really see anything. So we're gonna head over to the border and I'm gonna change it to 0.3. So that way we're gonna be able to see something over there. But then also I'm gonna bump up the complexity all the way to 10. And then we're gonna probably need to expand the mask a little bit more. So I'm gonna double click M again and let's just adjust it. So with this, you're gonna be able to control how much of the grid you see. So I think I'm good with this. And then I'm gonna apply the effect called fast box blur. So this is gonna low-key suppress our effect over here. So let's set it to 1. It's gonna look more sharp once we add some of the effects on top.
Drake went from Toronto actor to
So here we have the audio Drake went from Toronto actor. So what I'm gonna do is grab the type tool and we're gonna type in Toronto. Alright, in terms of the color, what you want to use is that hex code over here. So basically you just go over to red and pick something like that. That way we're gonna get that Canada vibe. And I'm gonna place the text somewhere here. In terms of the font, I'm using Articulate CF. I found it on Adobe page. Alright, so now here's the thing. What we need to do with this is add the movement. But in order to add the movement, we need to have a controller. And our controller could be created with a new null object. So what I'm gonna do with this is rename it to all1. And then we're gonna select all these 3 layers over here and we're gonna parent it to our all1 layer. So now if you open up any property over here, you're gonna see that we can control the whole animation. So what I'm gonna do with this is definitely add 1 keyframe for scale. Then I'm gonna move it to the right and I'm gonna zoom in. Then probably a smart idea would be just zooming out a little bit more. And also we can open up position and I'm just gonna have it probably that way.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music.
Alright, this looks pretty cool. It's definitely a bit too slow, so I'm gonna just squeeze it in. Then I'm gonna select these 2 keyframes. And in order to have a nice smooth graph over here, we're gonna hit F9. or you can just right click, go over to Keyframe Assistant and hit Easy Ease. Alright, so once you've done that, then make sure to head over to the graph editor, and here we're gonna fit the graph. Alright, so now I'm gonna select the second keyframe and I'm gonna drag it to the left. Then let's drag the other handle also to the left.
Drake went from Toronto
and we're gonna have
actor
something like that. Actually, let me disable the audio for now. Alright, the movement looks pretty good. I think we're gonna leave it like that. And now we're gonna get straight into the effects. Usually in the entire editing process, you should leave the effects for later, but I kind of want to see how it's gonna look right now. So let me just get to the beginning so we can see Drake better, and we're gonna start off with him. So I'm gonna select the layer and we're gonna start off with the curves effect. Over here, we just want a subtle touch, so just create a slight S curve. Then we're gonna apply another effect, which is gonna be called CC Light Sweep. So over here, we don't really want to go for such an intense effect. We can actually sell out the layer so we can see how it's gonna look. So basically what I'm gonna do is change sharp to smooth, and I'm gonna definitely decrease intensity. And what I really want to add over here is that backlight. So I'm gonna just decrease the edge thickness, and I think it should be decent. So now to bring it to life a little bit more, we're gonna add the shadow. So what I usually use for these types of animations is Shadow Studio. So this is an extremely cool plugin that gives you a lot of flexibility, and also it gets you that realistic shadow. But the thing is that it's paid, so I'm gonna show you what you could do instead. So the first option would be obviously drop shadow effect. You can just bump up the distance, increase the softness, and probably bump up the opacity. And something like that should do, that's also right. But I'm gonna show you a different way that is gonna be closer to Shadow Studio effect. So let's delete it for now, and then I'm gonna duplicate the layer. Then I'm gonna rename the bottom layer to Shadow. And over here we can actually delete these effects. And now if you apply CC Radial Fast Blur, you're gonna get that effect. So if you bump up the amount, it's gonna look like that. So we can actually use that effect and turn it into a shadow with the help of Fill effect. So I'm gonna just apply it. And over here I'm gonna change the color to black. Let's hit OK. And now if you play around with the center, you're gonna notice that we can actually control our shadow. So this is looking pretty cool. And as you can notice, we got that edge over here. So if I bump up the amount, it's gonna be even more visible. So in case if you want to get rid of that, you can always use the effect called Grow Bounce and just drop it on top and bump up the pixels. So this is gonna fix the problem. And then also what I would do if you were using this combination of effects is adding Fast Box Blur. Just drop it on top of everything and change it to something subtle like maybe 7. I think this should do. And I would definitely play around with the amount over here. And this is a very close look to the Shadow Studio effect. So this was a bonus tip. So let's delete it for now. And I'm gonna stick with Shadow Studio. Just gonna bump up the shadow length. One more effect we're gonna apply to young Drake is Tint, because I low-key wanna keep that animation in the black and white style in the beginning. And to be honest, that red text over here is perfectly matching the vibe of the image. Alright, so now is the time to actually create the movement because we need to proceed to another scene. So I'm gonna actually hit U for that layer over here. And as you can notice, we used scale keyframes. So if I hold Shift, click P, we can actually create position keyframes. So usually I would create another new object on top and then we would proceed with the movement. But since we haven't used position, we're gonna do it here. So let's go ahead and drag it to the right. I think something like that should do. Then I'm gonna select both keyframes and I'm gonna hit F9. Let's go over to the graph editor and here I'm gonna fit the graph. So essentially what we want to do is create a peak in the middle. So we want to use a mid graph, but I'm just gonna keep it a little bit more towards the left. So it goes on for a bit longer when it comes to the second scene. Pretty cool, we can slow it down. And also remember to keep track of the audio because we need to match the timing.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon with...
I think this is gonna be good enough. So now is the time to actually drop our another asset onto the timeline, which is gonna be Drake on stage. I'm gonna place it below all one layer. I'm gonna have him somewhere here and then I'm gonna scale him up and something like that should do. Maybe like that. I'm gonna actually take the effects from young Drake apart from CC Light Sweep and I'm gonna apply it to Drake on stage. So this is already giving us a very nice vibe. And now whenever we're adding new assets, we need to remember to also attach them to our all one layer because otherwise it's not gonna really move. So let's go ahead and do that. And also we need to have it here for a bit longer.
Toronto actor to global music icon.
So here in the voiceover, we have global music icon. And to perfectly showcase how many followers Drake has, we could use his Instagram handle, which is gonna show that his followers go way beyond the United States and Canada. So I'm gonna grab the type tool and over here, I'm gonna type in his nickname. Let me just change the font style to demi bold. I'm gonna bump it up a bit and I'm gonna recenter the layer. Now to make it easier for ourselves, we can pre-compose the layer. So I'm gonna right click, go over to pre-compose, and let's call it IG handle. Let's go inside, and what I'm gonna do is create a new solid, and this is just for a second because I wanna see properly what we were creating, so you don't have to redo it. Alright, so here's the nickname, and now we're gonna need to have a badge on the right. So I'm gonna grab the star tool, and over here, and first we're gonna push it to the left, and then over here on the right, with nothing selected, we're gonna create a shape. So what I'm gonna do with this is make sure that the type is set to star. I'm gonna change the points to 9, and then I'm gonna swap stroke with the fill. So obviously we're gonna need to have a blue color over here, so I'm gonna change red to something like that, should do. And then inside of it, we're gonna need to create a check. So I'm gonna grab the pen tool, and with this layer selected, we're just gonna create it like that. You can adjust it by double clicking, and then just head over to the properties panel, go over to shape 1, and we're gonna swap fill with the stroke. Here we want to use the white color, then the stroke with 6 should be fine. And I'm gonna round the cap and also the join. Alright, the check turned out a little bit too big, so I'm gonna double click it, and I'm just gonna squeeze it in. Now I'm gonna rename it to badge, and over here I'm gonna go over to scale, and let me just scale it down a bit, so it's in the right proportions. Alright, this should do. Then we're gonna duplicate the text, and over here I'm gonna type in a random number, and below I'm gonna type in posts. So what we wanna do with this is select the bottom line, and over here I'm gonna change it to regular. I'm gonna definitely decrease the font size, and as for this, we could probably bump it up a bit more. Then if you select the whole thing by hitting Ctrl A, you can adjust the distance, and I think something like that should do. Obviously this is a random number, I'm paying attention more to the followers he has, so let's proceed to that. And over here I'm gonna type in 139 millions the last time I checked. Let's change the bottom line to followers, and then we're gonna duplicate the text, and over here we're gonna need to type in following, and here we're gonna change it to, I don't know, say 193. So you should end up with something like that. Then what I'm gonna do is attach the badge to the nickname, and I'm gonna scale it down a bit and probably adjust it. Alright, this should look better for our animation. Now before we go back, make sure to delete white solid and go back now to the animation, and we're just gonna place it somewhere here. Now we can play around with the size. I feel like I made it a bit too small, so I'm gonna go back to our nickname, and let's just adjust it. Then I'm gonna place it right below Drake on stage, and we also need to make sure to attach it to all one layer. So now it's all gonna stay connected. Looks pretty cool. I'm gonna adjust the scale again, lots of adjustments here, and then let me adjust the badge.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon.
So just to match the audio, I'm gonna hit O, expand the position keyframe, and let's see now.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon.
Okay, looks cool. We just need to make sure that the peak is more towards the left.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon.
And now we're going to need to create a new null object. Let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to rename it to all2, and then I'm going to parent all1 to all2. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a position keyframe, and we're going to move upwards with this, just like that. We can actually expand our selected area. Then I'm going to hit F9 for the keyframes, go over to the graph editor, and here what you want to do is create a peak in the middle.
Music icon.
Right, this is definitely way too fast.
Music icon. With 5 Grammys and Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon. With 5 Grammys.
Right, the timing seems to be good. I'm gonna turn it off for now. And then we're gonna need to bring another picture onto the timeline, which is gonna be Grammy this time. So I'm gonna scale it down a bit, and then I'm gonna parent it to all1. Not to all2, to all1. Let's place it below all1. And now I'm gonna go ahead and grab the type tool, and over here I'm gonna type in 5. Let's bump up the font size. I'm gonna recenter the layer, and then we're gonna go ahead and pre-compose it. Now inside of that layer, I'm gonna actually toggle transparency grid so we can see. Now what I'm gonna do is drag it to the left a little bit, then I'm gonna hit Ctrl D, and I'm gonna drag it to the right. Now we're gonna turn this into an X, and then we're gonna make sure to create the position keyframe for number 5. Then I'm gonna move to the beginning, and I'm gonna drag it a little bit lower. So now what we want to do is the same procedure, so I'm gonna hit F9, go over to the graph editor, and here we're gonna fit the graph, and we're just gonna do it like that. So here's the graph we used. And now the reason we've created a graph is because we want to reveal the 5 with the harsh cut over here. I'm just gonna show you. So if you go ahead and pre-compose that layer one more time, And then you grab the rectangle tool, and with this layer selected, you just trim it just like that. It's gonna nicely slide in from the bottom. So this effect takes no time to create, so it's extremely easy. Then I'm gonna go back to our animation, and what you want to do is make sure it starts at around the time whenever we got the Grammy. So let's drop it right below. Then I'm gonna bump up the scale, and I'm gonna probably have it somehow like that. So now make sure to parent it to all 1, and now it's gonna nicely reveal, but we need to find the proper timing. Let me just scale it down, probably lift it up. And also the Grammy Award is covering the pre-comp too much, so I'm just gonna scale it down a bit. And maybe also we can scale this down, and this should be a bit better for our animation. I'm gonna just expand it so we can have the movement a little bit longer, and then make sure to drag the peak towards the left. And we're gonna need to adjust number 5. Also listen to the audio while you're creating your animation.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon. With 5 Grammys and estimated $400 million.
Alright, so now we're gonna create a new null object again. I'm gonna rename it to all 3, and I'm gonna parent all 2 to all 3. Now what I want to do with this is create a scale keyframe. I'm gonna expand selected area, just like that, and I'm gonna zoom out. And by the way, we can actually delete everything we've created at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and select everything apart these 2 layers and just trim it. It looks pretty cool, but what I'm gonna do is make sure to easy ease the keyframes, go over to the graph editor, and here we're gonna fit the graph, and obviously we're gonna need to create a mid graph. Let me just adjust the timing. Now we're gonna have $100 bills flying over the screen, and they're gonna cover the Grammy Award, but they're gonna reveal the net worth. So for this, we're gonna need to drop it on the timeline. Then I'm gonna pre-compose the layer. Let's just delete that part over here. We can hit OK, and I'm gonna go into that pre-comp. So here we need to play around with the comp settings. So for this, I'm gonna hit Ctrl K, or you can just go over here to the composition settings, and I'm gonna make sure to flip it. So I'm gonna change it to 1920 by 1080, just like that, and I'm gonna hit OK. Now I'm gonna go ahead and scale it down a bit. And now what you want to do at the around 4-second mark is create a position keyframe and also the rotation keyframe. Then I'm gonna go back to the beginning, and I'm gonna drag it to the left, just like that. And we're gonna decrease the value for rotation. Okay, something like that should do. So that's what we're gonna have. Now I'm gonna select all the keyframes, hit F9, go over to the graph editor, and here we're gonna squeeze the peak towards the left. Something like that should do. Our next step will be pre-composing the layer again, so I'm gonna right click, go over to pre-compose. We can delete that part, and we can type in cylinder. Let's hit enter. And over here what we're going to need to do is apply cylinder effect, CC cylinder. And now if you head over to the rotation and you keyframe all the values over here, X, Y, and Z, then hit U, you're gonna be able to play around with it a little bit. So whenever you're changing the value, we're just gonna be able to kind of control how the $100 bill is flying. So we're gonna move it to the right to the 1-second mark. And in the beginning, we're gonna set it up to my prepared values. So we're gonna start off with 80, then we're gonna type in 140, and on the bottom to the Z, we're gonna also add 140. So that's how it's gonna look. And obviously we're not done with it, so we need to actually fix the final position over here. So here we're gonna have -35, then we're gonna have -40, and also over here we're gonna have -35. So what we're gonna need to do is make sure that this banknote is traveling from the left to the right. So I'm gonna actually zoom out a little bit, and then I'm gonna create a keyframe for position, and I'm gonna drag it to the left. Alright, something like that should do. Then I'm gonna go over to the other keyframes, and I'm gonna move it across the screen. Alright, so let's see what we got. Okay, it looks pretty cool, but the thing is that we need to adjust our graphs. So we're gonna use the exact same graph we used inside the comp. So for this, I'm gonna go back, select all the keyframes over here, hit F9, go over to the graph editor, and we're gonna push the peak towards the left. Just like we did before. Alright, seems to be pretty cool. Then I'm gonna go back to the animation, and we're gonna make sure to adjust the timing. So now let's make sure to place it right above Grammy. Then we're gonna attach it to all 1, and now we can start playing around with it. So let me just listen to the audio.
Is an estimated $400 million net worth.
Alright, so the timing's a bit off, so I'm gonna hit you for this, and I'm gonna push it back.
Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth.
This should be a bit better.
$1 million net worth.
And then we're gonna have the dollars fly over here.
Estimated $400 million net worth.
Maybe even earlier.
Music icon. With 5 Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth.
Alright, so now what you want to do is make sure to apply drop shadow effect to our $100 bill. Here we're gonna decrease the distance and I'm gonna bump up the softness. So this is gonna give us nice separation. Also, I'm gonna go into that layer and here we're gonna turn on the motion blur. Let's go back. And now once you have it attached, I'm gonna definitely scale it up so it covers more of the screen. And now we're gonna need to duplicate this layer 3 times. So I'm gonna hit Ctrl D and let's make sure to offset it a bit more. And then we're gonna adjust the timing again.
An estimated $400 million net worth.
Too late actually.
Grammys, an estimated $400 million net.
Okay, pretty cool. So now what I'm gonna do is make sure that these $100 bills are not going in the same direction. So we're just gonna randomize it. So for example, I'm gonna go over to the rotation in the first one and I'm gonna bump it up. Maybe let's do it like that.
Grammys, an estimated $400 million net.
Okay, might look cool that way. Then I'm gonna turn off the audio for now. Then we're gonna slightly rotate this one. Then we're gonna zoom out and we're gonna take this one and we're gonna make it fly in the opposite direction. Alright, let's see. Stars look pretty cool, and don't worry that they're going all at the same time. We're gonna offset them in a second. I'm gonna go to the rotation in this one and we're gonna change it to something different than these values. But what I'm gonna do now is select everything from the top to the bottom. And if you have After Effects 26, you can actually hold down Ctrl plus Alt and just do it like that. If you don't have it, you have to go one by one. Okay. The beginning part is a little bit better, so I'm gonna adjust it. Okay, this starts to look pretty cool. And whenever we have this banknote over here flying through the award, we're gonna replace it with $100 million. So make sure to select these 2 layers. Actually, we can rename this one to 5x. I'm gonna hit T. And then I'm gonna attach opacity to the Grammy. So now we can actually control the opacity with one property over here. So I'm gonna create a keyframe for opacity and then I'm gonna change it to 0%. Okay, this is too subtle. Let's see now. Still too subtle. Okay, this might look pretty cool. And now at this very moment, we're gonna need to introduce the text. So I'm gonna grab the type tool and I'm gonna type in the $sign. 400M. And in terms of the color for this, make sure to use this hex code. Let's hit OK. Then I'm gonna recenter the layer and I'm gonna make sure to put it below the dollars. Then I'm gonna attach it to all one and we're gonna need to introduce it whenever the Grammy disappears. So let's hit U. It's gonna be around this time. Right, it turned out a little bit too big, so we're gonna decrease the scale. And then I'm gonna duplicate the text and on top, I'm gonna add net worth. So now instead of this, I want to make it a little bit more cinematic. So I'm gonna apply a facets font and I'm gonna decrease the font size. And also here we can make or turn it into a different color. Let's hit OK. Let's see it with the audio.
With 5 Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth. He's an estimated $400 million.
Actually, it could be a bit earlier. So we're gonna select the top layer. Then we're gonna take all of these apart from these 2, drag them to the back, and we're going to adjust the opacity. Maybe even earlier, you know.
He's an estimated $400 million. He's an estimated $400 million.
Then what I would do is just hit U and I would expand it.
With 5 Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth.
Yeah, that's perfect. Let me just close down all the precoms over here and then we're gonna actually create another no objects. I'm gonna hit Ctrl D, hit U, delete the last keyframe, and now I'm gonna parent 3 to 4. I'm gonna hit U for reference so we can see what's going on. And then I'm gonna apply one more keyframe over here, which is gonna be for position. Then I'm gonna move to the right and we're just gonna zoom out and we're gonna move to the right with the X position. So now what you want to do is apply mid graph. So if you go over to the graph editor, that's how it's gonna look. It's definitely too slow, so we need to squeeze it in. If you select all the keyframes and hold down Alt, you can squeeze it in like that. And also I'll probably go more towards the right and maybe even back. So now over here in the project panel, what we're gonna need to have is another picture. So I'm gonna take Drake. Let's drop it right above the $100 bills, and we're gonna need to use the mask. So I'm gonna take the ellipse tool, and over here I'm just gonna do it like that. So low-key like in Spotify. Then I'm gonna make sure it's attached to all one, and it looks pretty cool. Then also we're gonna need another text. So I'm gonna create one over here. Let's type in 130, hit enter, and type in billion streams. Actually, for this we can use left paragraph, and I'm gonna change the font to articulate. Let's go for demi-bold. Also I can really see it, so we need to place it over here, and we're gonna adjust the spacing. So let's place it right below Drake. We can actually use capital letters over here, and then I'm gonna definitely change the font size for this, and let's do it like that, more minimal. And then what you want to do is make sure to attach it to all one, so it stays connected. And I'm gonna scale it down. Also, you can scale down the profile pic. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that. And then also I'm gonna head over to all four, hit U, and I'm just gonna go down. Also, I'm thinking about adding a text animation over here, so I'm gonna go for ME01. This is from my pack, but you can use anything you want. Alright, looks cool. So now we're gonna reveal album covers around Drake, but for this, we're gonna create a new composition because we already have quite a mess over here. So I'm gonna go over here to the icon, and we're just gonna definitely bump up the settings. Let's call it covers, and then hit enter. Right away I'm gonna add white solid, but you don't really have to do it, I just wanna see what I'm creating. And then I'm gonna head over to the covers folder, which I prepared, and I'm gonna drop it all on the timeline. Alright, so what we need to do is make sure to select them all, then I'm gonna hit A on the keyboard to reveal anchor point, and we're gonna place it like that. Actually, let me adjust it. I think we should go even further with this. So now whenever you change rotation, it's just gonna go around this anchor point. So now what I'm gonna do is make sure to select them all, hit R, and we're gonna create keyframes for rotation. So now if I move forward, I'm gonna need to create kind of a circle that is gonna go around. So basically what you want to do is just start from number 2 and just do it like that. And just create a full circle, but if you're in After Effects 26, what you could do is just select everything from the top to the bottom, then hold Ctrl plus Alt, and then play around with the value and it's gonna proportionally adjust. That's such a time saver. Kudos Adobe. So this is a pretty convenient way. I'm gonna definitely offset it a bit. So now let's go ahead and select them all, hit F9, go over to the graph editor, and like usual, we're gonna squeeze the peak towards the left. Maybe let's offset it a bit. Alright, so this looks already pretty cool, but what I'm gonna do next is make sure to create a new null object. Let's call it all1. Now make sure to connect all the covers to our all1 layer. I'm gonna hit R, and we're gonna create a keyframe for rotation. Now I'm gonna push it to the right, and we're gonna decrease it to around 90 degrees. So that's what we're gonna have, and then we're gonna need to apply the same graph as before. So let's go over here, push it to the left, and maybe even more. Now I'm gonna go ahead and select all the covers again, and I'm gonna hit Alt-Shift-T in order to create opacity keyframes. Then I'm gonna go to the beginning, and I'm gonna change it to 0%. Now I'm gonna go back to our animation, and what you want to do is take the covers and drop it right below these two layers. I'm gonna attach it to all one, and right over here we're gonna need to create another movement, which is gonna be another zoom out effect. So I'm gonna create a new null object, rename to all 5, and I'm gonna parent 4 to 5. Now with this we're gonna create a keyframe for scale, and I'm gonna zoom out again. Then let's go ahead and place it a little bit higher so it's around Drake, and I'm gonna apply mid graph over here. Then let's adjust the timing so the covers are popping up whenever we got the middle of the graph. Okay, looks pretty cool, but the thing is that we need to fade it in with opacity keyframes. So let's do it like that. And let's listen to the audio.
$1 billion net worth and billions of streams.
Okay, so it definitely needs to be a bit later.
Of streams. He built one of music's biggest careers. Billions of streams. He built one of music's biggest careers.
Okay, let's adjust the timing a bit more. We're gonna take this and that.
$400 million net worth and billions of streams, he built one of music's biggest careers.
Alright, it's logged in. So now what I'm gonna do is go back to our covers, and now I'm gonna duplicate all 1, hit U. Let's delete the first keyframe this time, and we're gonna parent 1 to 2. Now I'm gonna push that keyframe to the right, and we're just gonna expand this movement. So this is just gonna go on for a little bit longer, but we obviously need to adjust the graph. And this should do. Alright, so now the goal is to kind of go back with that circle. So the way we want to do it is select them all, the covers, hit R, create keyframes for rotation, and now after a while we're gonna change it back to 0. So if you set it to 0 in 1, it's gonna automatically set the rest of them. So that's what we're gonna have. So now what I want to do with this is make sure it's a little bit earlier. Obviously we're gonna need to work on the timing in a second. But first, let's adjust the graph. So I'm gonna use the mid graph for this. And also over here in O1, I'm gonna hit U. I'm gonna take this keyframe, copy, I'll paste it over here, and we're gonna make a full circle. So let's set it up to -1. So now I'm gonna go ahead and select these keyframes, go over to the graph editor, and we're just gonna adjust it like that. Let's see. We're just gonna take these keyframes and push them back a bit. Then I'm gonna expand them, and this looks pretty cool. But there's one more thing we need to do. We kind of need to trim them all, apart from number 1. So I'm gonna select them all from 2 to 8. Then I'm gonna trim them, and they're gonna start disappearing one by one. So we're gonna start from the bottom, so just have the cut 1 frame apart. And then if you select it all, you can adjust it. Alright, I think this should do, but let's hear it with the audio.
Of music's biggest careers. Now, Iceman is opening his...
Alright, so it definitely needs to be a bit earlier, so we're gonna take all these keyframes over here, then I'm gonna push them back, and also I'm gonna take what we've created here and push it back as well.
He built one of music's biggest careers. Now, Iceman is open...
One more adjustment. And we should be good to go. So what we're gonna need to do here is add drop shadow effect. So I'm gonna go over to number 1, type in drop shadow. We're gonna change the distance to 0, bump up the softness to 150. And then I'm gonna copy the effect and I'm gonna paste it to the other layers. So that way we're gonna have a little bit of separation. Let's go back. And now we're gonna need to take care of the text over here. So whenever the covers are popping up, we're gonna make sure it disappears. So let's go over here, add opacity keyframe, then change it to 0.
He built one of music's...
And maybe let's make it snappier.
He built one of music's biggest careers.
We're gonna adjust the timing in all 5.
He built one of...
Right, it looks cool, but we need to make sure that the peaks over here.
He built one of music's biggest careers.
So whenever the circle is going back, what I'm gonna do is apply scale keyframe to drag in the middle. Then we're gonna change it to 0, and we're gonna find the right timing, which is gonna be around this time.
Man is opening his next man is...
Now let's go ahead and apply mid graph. And here we're gonna type in Iceman. Now I'm gonna bump up the font size and we're gonna change the color to something like that. Let's hit OK. And here also I'm gonna use one of the text animations from Motion Essence. Let's take maybe merge. I'm gonna place the text layer right over here and then I'm gonna attach it to all 1, and then we're gonna need one more null object. So I'm gonna go ahead and create one. Let's call it all 6, then parent 5 to 6. And we're just gonna move with the camera over here. You can actually zoom it out a little bit. Right, and we need to find the right timing. It's pretty cool. I'm just gonna adjust it one more time. And we should go upwards with this. So we got the text in the middle. So now we're gonna add more effects. So for sure, I'm gonna add Shadow Studio to Drake. Let's bump up the shadow length. Also, we're gonna add Shadow Studio to the Grammy. Right, should do. Then I'm gonna add tint effect over here. Then we're gonna use textures from Texture Labs. You got the link on the screen. I always recommend that page. This is not a promo, but they are awesome. So I'm gonna take 305 and drop it on the timeline. Then we're gonna rotate it by 90 degrees and we're gonna add curves. Before we change anything about the curves, I'm gonna head over to the modes and I'm gonna change it to screen, and we're gonna need to actually make it a little bit more subtle. So I'm gonna probably do it like that. And this is giving us a very nice look over here. Maybe push it even higher. And then I'm gonna head over to opacity and I'm gonna change it to 50%. Now I'm gonna head over to the project panel again and we're gonna take 246, drop it on top, rotate it by 90 degrees. And this time we're gonna use a different mode, which is gonna be soft light. I'm gonna change percentage to 20% and we're gonna apply curves again. So over here, same procedure, I'm just gonna push it like that. Now I'm gonna create a new adjustment layer on top. Let's call it vignette, apply CC vignette to this. And over here, we're just gonna pin highlights a bit more. And this is gonna be a game changer for our animation. So now let's go ahead and apply motion blur to everything. And also we're gonna head over to Alt1, hit P, Alt click the stopwatch. So just hold down Alt, click on the stopwatch, type in wiggle, and we're gonna go for something like 0.7, 10. So this is gonna shake the camera a little bit. All right, so now let's hear it with the audio. What have we cooked?
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon. With 5 Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth, and billions of streams, he built one of music's biggest careers. Now, Iceman is opening his next chapter.
Alright, we're missing one thing, which is actually motion blur in the covers. So I'm gonna turn it on. And by the way, guys, if you head over to the composition settings, I'm using something very subtle for this animation. So shutter angle at 80 and shutter phase at -40. So let's go back.
Drake went from Toronto actor to global music icon. With 5 Grammys, an estimated $400 million net worth, and billions of streams, he built one of music's biggest careers. Now, Iceman is opening his next chapter.
We got a fire animation, it's minimal, it's clean, it's very, very nice. It took a little bit of time. It could be definitely posted on social media, and I hope you learned something new today. Alright, we're gonna wrap it up here. Make sure to check out the video on the screen, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.